Welcome to Your Image, the public relations programs that mirror the society. Today we are having a continuation of the topic ArchEndSARS protests 1 year after. Any lessons? Of course, last week we discussed about some lessons learned, how the government agencies should be more proactive in stepping up actions and engendering peace. We also talked about the youth not being too overzealous, try to manage their affairs very well. And this week we'll be looking at the investigations that were carried out, the panels that were instituted. How have they fared? The results, the outcomes, how have they been implemented? Is it for the betterment of the society? How far have we gone? This week, I have once again Pastor Dare Folarin, a veteran public relations practitioner, a former chief press secretary to the state government.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. We'll continue to have you. I also had last week, and is still here with me, Mr. Jamiu Folarin, a lecturer at the Christian University, Abeokuta. He's also a mass communication expert. You are welcome.
Thank you for having me on the show.
Yeah, we missed the youth in the person of Johnson Idowu. He's here with us this week. And Johnson Idowu is a former public relations officer for the Student Union Government of Moshood Abiola Polytechnic. But now he has grown. He is now a CEO, Distinct Communication outfit in Abeokuta here. You're welcome.
It's my pleasure, sir.
So the floor is open, and we want us to look at the panels that were set up. Of course, the panel was set up to establish the reasons why those agitations, protests came up, and then to now come up with a conclusive arrangement where we can step those protests, where we can be able to visualize and begin to nip in the bud those areas of friction. So, how have you fared? Any result from the panels?
Yeah, the panels have met and they sat, and some of the things, there were a lot of revelations. You know, when I was listening to some of their reports, all of them, virtually all of them, reported that the policemen hit them with gun butts, they whipped them, they kicked them. Some even said they boxed them. Some were detained illegally. Some were maimed. Some were shot. So various acts of brutality and all the rest were reported. And then most of the states have submitted their reports. But it's instructive that it's only Lagos State that has paid compensation. We are still expecting other states to pay compensation to those who were affected. Having said that, it's a good thing, because this will moderate the policemen in how they treat with people, especially under a democratic dispensation. We are not a banana republic, and we are not in a guerrilla thing that people should be treated civilly. If a crime has been committed, arrest the person and take the person to court under 24 hours, the writ of habeas corpus, So all these laws must be followed, So what we are saying is that this has happened. The EndSARS protest was a watershed in relationship between youths, if not only even youths, labor relationships, human rights organizations, and because human rights organizations too do protest, labor too protest. So this is a better, we are coming up, in how to deal with each other in a democratic setting. So I'm glad that there have been lessons, and the lessons have been learned.
Yeah, I'd like to ask the youth who is here to represent the largest population that we have in the nation. The question is this: are you justified, or are you happy with the reports or submissions of those panels?
Yeah. Well, obviously, the NSAS protest has really done a lot between the police and public relationship, because before the protest, there has been several cases of police brutality, but to a large extent, this brutality has been reduced. Although I cannot say categorically that it has been eradicated, but it has reduced to the barest minimum. And the panel has done a whole lot of work with the arrangement. Most of the panels have submitted their submission, but it's just unfortunate that our government, most of these states, are not meeting up with the recommendations of these panels. Like rightly said by Mr. Folani, only Lagos State has paid compensation that was awarded by the Lagos State panel. Some other states like that, they are yet to pay, which is not good on the part and the image of the government. We also build the already existing mistrust between the people and the government, because what most people have apathy towards the panel, they thought that it is just the usual jamboree setup where they just put it so that they can silence the members of the public. So it would be better if the government will take proactive measure and meet up with the recommendations of the panel, pay necessary compensation where necessary, give punishment to those who it is due to, and ensure that they were able to project a favorable image that can be good for the government at the end of the day.
I want to ask you, can we continue to have a fixed mind that it's only the police that is on the other side? The youth, are the police not also suffering from the angle of the youth? Because when there are protests, we can see some stoning, we can see some other objects being thrown here and there, or perhaps that is the cause why some policemen were brutal. Can it be justified?
Obviously, during the NSAS protest, there are situations whereby there were hijacks of the protest from hoodlums, so to say. But we cannot say that the police are not at the receiving end. Part of the demand of the protest then was that the youth were even agitating for a better welfare for the police. Because at the end of the day, whatever is the decision of the government, both the police and the youth, we have to bear the consequence. So the police also, on their own side, are having a share of what the society looks alike in general. So it is not the youth alone. Both the police and the youth are having a share of the present situation that we have on ground.
Thank you. Mr. Folani.
There is something to recommend, is another thing to carry out and implement the recommendation. One of the things I noticed during the sitting of the panel in Ogun State, in Lagos State, some of them expressed frustration in terms of cooperation, even from stakeholders, even the government. And this is worrisome when I read that, and I observed that even some evidence have been tampered with, and as a result of it, which will definitely affect the work of the panel. But notwithstanding, the panel that they have done their job and duty, is now incumbent on the government to ensure that the recommendations of the panel to avoid the repeat of what happened last year, because the most important thing we should be talking about is the solution now. It has happened. We don't want a situation where we'll be having a repeat of that gory situation. People died because they are expressing their view and their grievances. So it is natural for people to express their grievances, to protest. It's the duty of the government even to protect the protesters. It is natural also for protests to be hijacked. It is also the government's duty to protect protesters. Okay.
So as a result of this, so it's natural to have a protest hijack.
Yes, that's the nature of virtually in all protests around the world. Yeah. There is tendency that the protests will be hijacked because there are people waiting for such opportunity to happen, and they use the opportunity to achieve their own agenda.
Let me just take you up on that. The last election, I think in the US or an incident that happened.
Trump.
Yes.
Trump.
We saw the way the areas were cordoned off. And except in the capital, where some incidents happened, you could see that citizens were unable to penetrate. So why can't we have such a situation in Nigeria?
It's work in progress. It's work in progress. That's why we're saying that, unlike last year, look at during this demonstration, you know, we saw more civility from the law enforcers. And, you know, going forward, it's work in progress. And people are bound to, you know, once we have these engagements, people are bound to improve, you know, because the police officers too have been sent for training, how to handle civil, you know, in a civil manner. You know, it used to be the Nigerian police force. So they are taking the force away from the police. So they are becoming more civil. They even have a human rights department. If your right has been trampled upon, the Nigerian police force, go there. The human rights, and they will start tracking your case from Abuja. There is a lot of things being done.
Yeah, I agree with you, because some of the brutality issues that were brought to the fore, we saw some of the police commissioners saying that we are investigating, and when such investigations were concluded, the culprit
will be punished.
And we are seeing some of them being dismissed. That's a good sign. It's a good development. But I want us to look at the distrust. How do we build, or what mechanism can we come up with that can remove this friction, that can remove this distrust between government and the people?
Okay, removing mistrust between government is simple. Just ensure that you provide you fulfill your part of the contract, just like we mentioned last week, that the government has the responsibility to provide social amenities, to ensure security of lives and property. If that is done, there will not be need for protests. There will not be need for grievances, and there will not be need for conflict. So the conflict stems from the situation where the rights and of people are not respected and trampled upon. So for us to have solution to this, there must be mutual respect, understanding, and there should be platform for what we call jojo rather than war. Because when there are issues, don't wait till the issue will not be able to be resolved. For example, just like I mentioned last week, we need to look at the proposition of public relations that we need to be proactive. Public relations is proactiveness. It's not necessarily allowing crisis to happen before you respond to it. We preach against fire brigade approach. We need to be proactive. Ensure that you prevent crisis from happening. How do you prevent crisis from happening? When citizens lodge complaint to the police, they must respond to that complaint. When the right of a citizen is being trampled upon, it must be addressed without necessarily going through a bottleneck. So for us to have a good relationship between the government, for example, the police that are law enforcement of agencies, and we also have the citizens, there must be mutual understanding, mutual respect, and the part of the citizen to also obey the constitution. We must also note that, because it's not enough for us to say government must protect our rights and without us also obeying the law of the land. So if we violate the law as citizens, we must be ready to bear the consequence. But if we work within the dictate, the spirit and the letter of the constitution, then we must also be protected. So for us to have good relationship, both parties, the government and the citizen, must ensure that they do their part in order to have peaceful
I like to add
coexistence.
that is a social contract. Promises, electoral promises must be kept. You know, when you promise something and you don't do it, you know, that's why there is distrust. You know, they say it's government speak. That's government speak, they will promise and they will not do. So people tend not to trust government. So if government is saying it will do this, they say, but you know, we are seeing improvement. So if people are elected into office, fulfill their electoral promises, and they stop this rape on the people, you know, because the people have been raped serially. So that's why they don't trust government. So, but once the narrative changes and government starts, you know, fulfilling their promises, you say you want to do something and you deliver on your promises, the trust will be rebuilt.
No, before you say anything, I want to ask you, what is your expectation of how youth can express themselves, and your expectation of when the youth expresses themselves, how should agencies of government or what policies should evolve that can establish a very peaceful environment in this nation?
The way the youth can express themselves, it's through protest. Protest has always been the way. But like as a student union,
is it only through protest?
I'm coming inside. As a student union leader, we always mention 3 C's, which is the consultation, consolidation, before confrontation. Confrontation aspect is the protest aspect. So in engaging the government, the youth must understand that there is need for consultation first, consolidation before confrontation, which is the protest. Consolidation is building up on what you've presented before the government. It is just that we have an unfortunate situation whereby the people do not trust the government. In a sane environment, the first 2 should have been the only approach: consultation and consolidation. When you make your grievances known to the government and you follow it up, there should be solution. It is in a situation where
perhaps it is the approach of the consultation that is not bringing out results.
When the approach of the consultation is not bringing out result, that is when we have consolidation. This is telling us that, okay, go for a reminder. Our governor, sir, we have brought this before you. You are yet to attend to it. We are still hoping that you will. And in the situation where such is not now attended to, that is when you see people going out for protest. I've been a part of protest. It's just that the setting of the EndSARS protest was what brought about the hijack. Most of the protesters don't know themselves. It was mobilized through social media. So people coming from different who doesn't know themselves, that is why it was like. But a well-planned protest should not be hijacked. I could remember I was involved in a protest, and we have the policemen on ground to secure us. We are even forming security line for ourselves to prevent infiltration from members of the public who may want to take opportunity to hijack the protest. So protest is a good approach, only that when you want to put a protest in place, you need to plan very well. Protest doesn't just come up like what we have in the EndSARS, whereby you just call A, call B from different angles, you don't know them.
So they were not organized.
That is the major problem with the EndSARS protest.
A particular incident happened where government called for the leaders of the youth to come forward. Do you think that is good?
The problem is not a problem that just started. There is mistrust, even among the people. When the government, during the protests that the government invite leaders, people were saying we don't have leaders. So who will go out and channel?
A struggle without leadership.
That is
how can you now hand results?
Like I said, that is the reason why the protest was hijacked. There is nobody to put the protest in order that, okay, those that were assumed to be leaders were because of their public appearance, because they were regarded as public figures. The like of Faz, the like of Mr. Macaroni, the like of Aisha Yusufu, because they were not a leader put in place. So there is need for a leader, the youth, to have a structure, to be organized, so that whenever they are putting their agitations forward, the civil approach will be used, because they will have an organized setting that can make something happen for them.
Thank you very much. Let's look at the agencies of government. We are pointing accusing fingers at the police. Are there no other agencies that this kind of impunity, this kind of brazen display of force, brutality?
Oh, there are so many agencies. You know, in the Ministry of Justice, you have this advocacy thing. There is the arm, you know. Then we have the civil rights movements. Then we have the so many organizations of government, Reconciliation, National Orientation Agency.
Are they doing their job?
Well, you know, it spoke about institutional collapse. Our institutions are not living up, you know, to their billings, you know. So that's why we need to come up with that. Even NIPR, we should be sensitizing people, we should be sensitizing the youth. So let's do more.
And that's why even during the protest, just like he mentioned, after the government responded to the 5-point agenda, the protesters continue protesting, saying that it goes beyond EndSARS, that there are other decay in other level of governance that needed to be addressed. And they talk about even the law itself, issue of economy, among other things that we are not originally part of the protest.
Demands.
That just to tell us and support the idea that police cannot be isolated. And what I always say is that police are part of the society. The reflection of what the police are doing is the reflection of the members of the society. Whatever the police is doing, we as citizens, is our character. So we need to reform ourselves. We need to look at not only the police, we need to look at the education sector, we need to look at the religion, we look at the mass media. We need public relation practitioners and professionals need also to contribute to this issue by ensuring that we have that value system that will enable us to act rightly. Because the gist and the foundation of this problem is in our value system. The police did not act right because of the value system. Those that are breaching the law, the police are about arresting, they also hide under being brutalized to continue committing their crime. So it's not limited to the police. Virtually all institutions, and there's need for us to reform ourselves and to reform all institutions in order to address the challenges we have. And solution is the most important. Just like we mentioned, after 1 year, what insight do we get from it? What are our limitations? What are the evidence provided from all what has happened? And how do we forge forward after this?
In area of governance, it is believed that there are certain investigative activities that are being carried out that individual people may not be seen. Underground investigations. Can we justify that all these are still happening? And what result are we having?
Well, they are still happening, though we are not getting joy. You know, don't forget that the DSS, they are carrying out investigations. Then PR2 is analyzing trends and predicting consequences. You do that. So they are flagging it to people, but most of the information sometimes are not being acted upon.
Is it that at the apex that those policy issues, those new outcomes that are being brought about are not being taken action upon?
Yeah, that's why we have this gap. That's why we have what we are having. So, but if everybody, all stakeholders, if we now come together and you flag something to government, and then government will act on it, the society will be better.
You see, I want us, even in our own area of operation, communication, public relations, it's like we're also shying away from our duty, which is to begin to scan the environment, to begin to speak to the powers that be, to begin to send proposals. Because I believe that PR practitioners too must come up with a very viral and active actions in their respective areas of operation. If in the DSS, the PR angle is looked into and proposals and explanations are sent to the appropriate quarters, it is now left for us at the other level to begin to say, okay, we have sent proposal.
Yes.
This has not been done. That has not been done. Then government at the higher level will have no cause other than to implement. But
you're absolutely right. We need enlightenment. We need to enlighten. People need to be alive to their responsibilities. Agencies, professionals, all of us, we need to do more.
That takes me to the agencies of government that are information-based.
I think in respect of that, I am also one of the information managers in terms of fact-checking. One of the problems with NSAS protests and the issue around it is issue of information management, issue of false information, manipulated content, also fuel the issue of NSAS protests. So as a result of this, we need to ensure that we manage information from the government side, from the protesters. We must promote narrative that will achieve our objective. We want reform. We must also not be part of the problem. From the government, it's not enough for us to quell protests with false information. From the protesters, it's not enough for us to spread fake news in quote to achieve our objective. The most important thing in public relations, promote truth and factual presentation of issue. This is how we can resolve the problem we have in terms of information management.
Thank you very much. First, I believe you have been enjoying our guests. They have been coming up with active and visionary steps that government can take, that even individuals can take, groups can take. This is Your Image, a public relations program on TV. Next week, same time, please join us.